Welcome, everyone. This is the time for music. And guess what? We don't have music. There we go. Look at Mel. She's got it. She's got it under control there. Look at that. There she is. Woohoo!
She'll be in the Mardi Gras party tomorrow. Oh,
Abs-
today. It's today.
Absolutely. This is Mardi Gras weekend.
Yeah.
Yes, and they've done something unusually different. They've kept the public transport open for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Very good move.
Yeah.
Very thoughtful move.
Sydney's pretty good with that, actually. New Year's
Huh?
Eve, they're very good with stuff like that.
Yes, they are actually. I'm just waiting for the live to start. Yes, it has.
Tomorrow.
Yes, it has started. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Disruptive Business Leadership. Um, as you know, we have this every single week, but once a month, we are very, very honored, privileged, and pleased to have a guest who used to be with us every single week, and then she became allergic to us, and she said no more. You know, you remember that boxing event where um, the youngster, what is his name, Martin Manny, eh?
Manny Pacquiao.
He said no more, no mas,
Yeah.
no mas, and so we were very, very smart in that we managed to convince our friend and guest Lynette to join us once a month. So we're privileged and honored to have her with us, um, and absolutely thrilled that she has joined us. And then last one little mention is welcome to our hosts Martin and Mel that turn up every single week. And then, of course, our master connector, Merrill, just a big thank you to him for always being our cheerleader, our shouter, our master connector. And I see he's already put comments in. Alex has joined us. So, with that, I hand the reins over to my very good friend and wonderful LinkedIn linkability colleague, Lynette, to run the session today.
Thank you, Roy. It's a pleasure to be back with you. Thank you for having me every month at the end of the month. It's always just a thrill to wake up on a Saturday morning and go, yes, today's the day. I'm back with the team. So this week, I understand, is the final of the series that you've been talking about this month about listening. And so today I'm really keen to be talking about executive listening and how that plays out in the workplace, both for executives and senior leaders and for those who are working with executives and senior leaders, and of course how that plays out online, because with the new AI visibility, the whole rule has changed around how we do things. And I was really intrigued to discover at a personal level that my understanding of listening was in fact very different from what other people's ideas around listening were. I was taking it as a very literal thing, something that you hear, but in actual fact, I am now seeing it in a bit of a more broad spectrum. And so today I'd like us to be having a think about listening as a strategy, not a soft skill, which is what I thought it was all about, but why listening at executive level is often misunderstood. The difference between operational listening and strategic listening. In fact, what is operational listening and strategic listening? Why listening is becoming more valuable, not less, in an AI mediated environment, and how LinkedIn changes the context of executive listening. So it seems to me that listening used to happen in rooms like this, where we would talk and people would listen. But now I'm thinking that it happens in our feeds, and that listening is something that we actively do when we look at posts and we think about them and then we make comments on them. So at a tactical level, we're taking listening away from just being something that's a passive thing and is something that is really active. And of course, that fits into the whole active and passive listening idea as well. So today, I want to just start the ball rolling by asking each of our panelists about listening as a strategy and how they see that fitting into the AI mediated world. And I'm not certain whether you'd like to just let us know a little as you're doing this about who you are and what you do as well. Just dovetail that in nicely, since we haven't done introductions today, as we go around the room. So Mel, why don't you start us off? I know that you'll have some interesting things to say about this.
I'm just delighted that we're continuing to explore listening as a concept, as a strategy, and really from all of its different angles. I'm delighted also that today's topic introduces the word executive. I think sometimes as leaders and how we show up in the world, whether you're an aspiring leader, you're an emerging leader, you're an established leader, or you're preparing someone to succeed you, I think there's different ways that we approach it. What I think about the framework of executive listening is it implies some ownership in the process, or others will call it skin in the game. When I'm not thinking about skin in the game, I am a hybrid event conversion strategist who is certified in trust. Hashtag cultivate trust. And I love having conversations across cultures and generations and genders and identities with people who are trying to define what trust means and what it looks like in complex environments.
Oh, I love the way you did that. Very nicely done. Martin, you'll have worked with executives and you'll have an opinion about executive listening, I'm certain.
Roy, I've been watching YouTube this week and I keep seeing your video brochures in my feed. And well, I know, Roy, and I've just ignored everything that Linnea said to me because my mind was occupied. I was on detracted. I didn't understand what was going on because I didn't listen. And that's the first and key point, is actually listening. And the reason my mind was occupied, because I noticed a lot of people want things clarified in their mind until they understand something, not yet prepared to listen. Because their mind, no, we do it this way and these things are happening. And I tell you, executives don't like that. An executive's time, like everybody else's time, is valuable. So setting aside the time to listen, ask questions to understand, and then engage in the conversation. This also comes down to my favorite word for LinkedIn, which is storytelling. I'm taking a break from LinkedIn content for the time being. I tell you, I still go on LinkedIn, and what I'm seeing is AI is absolutely, in my opinion, ruining LinkedIn. It's not listening to people. It's withdrawn. LinkedIn local, our local community catching together. And that's the point for executives. What are the key initiatives? Stakeholders, customers, the organization, executive, all these different things. The time with an executive is crucial, but executives need to listen to their teams, to their customers, what's happening, not being so consumed with the strategy that they forget the grind. And that's the most important part of listening, what is actually going on. Because when people aren't listening, or they're not, information isn't being given, their mind fills it with. Most rumors start because of lack of clarity.
Are you listening, Roy?
I certainly am.
So What are your thoughts about Martin spending his time looking at your video brochures instead of actually listening to what I was saying? Because it's very easy, you know, for me to get the huff here. You've just stolen our Prime Minister, our former Prime Minister. What else are you Australians going to take from we poor New Zealanders?
We're going to send you Tony Abbott. Don't worry. It's a one in, one out.
Well, I wonder whether she's going to stand for Prime Minister in your election.
In fact, we're going to send you Albanese. That's who we're going to send
you.
All right, we'll compromise. We'll send you Trump.
Oh, God.
Welcome, Felipe. Welcome. So glad that you could join us. So my name is Roy Kowalski. I'm based in Sydney, Australia. I call myself the promotional product disruptor, specializing in trade show preparation for companies. And what I've started to find is, this is literally now close to 2 years, is that companies go and spend money on purchasing a trade show stand, and then they ask themselves the burning question: now what? What am I going to do? What should I be doing? And we've got to find somebody in the company that's doing the least to get them to help us. So let's ask somebody that knows nothing about trade show preparation to help us. Scenario 1. Scenario 2. Oh my word, it's 1 week to go. We haven't done anything for our trade show stand. Let's get some merch. Let's see what merch we've got lying around in the office that we haven't used for 17 years. And let's give it away. Felipe, you're laughing. It happens. I promise you. Linnea, you're laughing. I promise you, I've seen it time and time and time again.
I'm laughing because I've seen it too, and it's true.
Absolutely.
I've been the guilty party in some cases.
So let's talk about, in fact, let's go back to that. That's who I am, and that's what I do. I help companies prepare for trade shows, and specifically with one outcome in mind: profitability and return on investment. That's it. I don't do it for any other reason. I don't make it to make your stand look pretty. I don't make it to look like you are the best looking person in the world. I do it to help you achieve an outcome that delivers a return on investment in the form of profitability, which is all about conversations and conversion. But that's not what we're talking about today. So my experience, and I have had quite a reasonable amount of experience of working with executives in different companies. I think the biggest obstacle that executives have with regards to listening is 3 letters: ego. I think the ego gets in the way of themselves listening. Because what happens is, an executive turns up at a board meeting, an executive turns up at a company meeting, and instead of listening to what all these people, and I know that there's one person amongst us that is really good at this, and that's my friend Felipe, at listening, is what people don't do is they don't come along with an open mind. They come with a fixed mindset. We have to do this. So when you turn up with a fixed mindset, what you've done is you've closed your mind. And if you close your mind, you can't listen properly. So there are 2 things. Number 1, move your ego aside if you're an executive leader. Number 2, come to the meeting with an open mind. My logic has always been, and it's a saying that I use time and time again: enter every conversation / meeting with an intention to learn something. Enter every conversation / meeting with an intention to learn something. That's what I believe in. That's what I'm sticking to. My name is Roy, and I'm out.
Felipe, we're just on the first round of questions talking about executive listening. So I'd be interested to hear your views, because you work with executives a lot. And I know you've had a busy week. You've been on at least 3 events that I know about, possibly more. This would make the 4th, if not more than that. So I'm so pleased that you've arrived to lift the tenor of the conversation, given that I'm a bit outnumbered by Australians here today. So I'm glad now to even the playing field about the 2 Americans, 2 Australians and a Kiwi. That seems a bit like a bar joke, doesn't it, really? But we're talking about executive listening. So I'd be interested in some opening thoughts from you on this, and I am inviting our panelists to dovetail in who it is that they are and what they do.
Well, thank you, Linaire, and this is twice this week with you. So for me, it's an honor to be on stage with you. And hi, Roy, Martin, and Melanie, of course. Great live today, Melanie. So for those of you I haven't met, my name is Felipe Cofino, HR executive, LinkedIn top voice, international bestselling author of a children's book, and a LinkedIn enthusiast who tries to help employers, executives really see the value of LinkedIn. And I'm going to take a page from Roy's book and go back to one of my old, I don't want to say taglines, but it was, I don't help people that are companies that are successful create culture. I help companies become successful by creating a good culture. And so to your point here about listening. So I think the number one thing that I've learned over the 30 years I've been doing this is something that I still train to today. I just trained to it this past Monday, was about communication styles. Because checking the ego at the door, Roy, 100% accurate, but that's just opening the door. Then they got to take some action. And that action is actually thinking differently, behaving differently, speaking differently. And so what I've realized is that if you can get them to check the ego at the door and then educate them to understand that, hey, people are different. They receive communication differently. They respond differently to different types of communication. And they're more likely to hear and listen to you if you understand their preferred style. And we all have 4 styles. Whether you've done Myers-Briggs or DISC assessment or just plain old communication styles, you know that we all have different styles. That is, I think, the part that sometimes executives forget about. And if they would remember that, it would help them listen so much better.
That's interesting. That makes a lot of sense to me too. Now, you've invoked the presence of LinkedIn, and given that we are on LinkedIn with this LinkedIn Live today, let's have a bit of a think about senior leaders on LinkedIn and the executive gap that I'm seeing. It's election year in New Zealand. These are our national elections. They happen every 3 years. And as part of my own personal preparation for those, I always have a look at the LinkedIn profiles and presence of all of the people standing for our country's highest office. Now, generally speaking, I'm very disappointed with what I see. Very poor profiles from most of them. Virtually nobody putting out content that their constituents want to read, and certainly not getting across their messages very well. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this, and no doubt there will be more. Well, I hope there'll be more later on in the year as people really ramp up towards our election in October, I think it might be, or November. But the prospect of this doesn't seem to change behavior, which is that if you are not on LinkedIn as a senior leader in a visible way, you are generally invisible, particularly in a business setting. And we all need to remember that with the arrival of AI, with such a thud into our business lives, that if we are not active on LinkedIn and don't have a good presence here, then that is going to ripple out into AI, and we won't be discovered and surfaced there either. So it's incumbent on us to look at our profiles and make sure that we are coming up with a really good content, we're active, our presence is clearly defined, so that AI, LinkedIn's AI, can pick us up and make sure that we are put in front of the right audience. And it is the same with AI. So my view is that senior leaders are not doing this in a very good way at all, by and large. Of course, there are outliers and exceptions, but they are hard to come by. And I would really like to encourage senior leaders to be doing more with their LinkedIn. But to talk about executive listening on LinkedIn, what are we seeing leaders do instead of listening? Are we seeing them reposting lots of content without adding any of their own thoughts? Are we seeing them posting company press releases, for example, or content that is not their own, so that they're tone deaf to what it is that their audience might want to hear? My perspective is that people do want to hear from senior leaders, but we want to hear from them. We don't want their company BS. We want to hear from them. We want to see them as human, and we want to understand their viewpoint and their ideas, and we want to learn from them, frankly. I really do believe that LinkedIn's a great platform for learning. So that's my take on executives on LinkedIn, that they are not necessarily reading the room and listening to the room well. So some ideas around that, going around the table. Mel, we'll start with you again on this one. Some thoughts around executive listening when it comes to posting, say, for example.
I find a lot of the leaders who we're connected to or whose content pops up sometimes is a repost of a document on a company page. It's a reshare of someone else's opinion. I think one of the challenges, and I appreciate this from meeting Roy through Thought Leadership Branding Club, some leaders aren't aware of the Thought Leadership channel. They're aware of the marketing channel. They've got the sales channel. You have your KPIs, or whatever we want to call them now. You're looking for the searchability or the discoverability of brand messages. And I think sometimes, and I was in a bunch of seminars about AI recently, preparing for this webinar series I'm launching. And in the process, I think sometimes what we're missing is personalized content. We care about other people. We care about their opinions. We care about how they show up. Felipe lit up our week. We could find Felipe everywhere, on every platform. And he really reminded us that when a leader shows up with personality, with their own style, you can feel an energy that encourages you to lean in and listen. And I think they're missing the invitation part.
That makes sense. Honestly, I don't know how Felipe is showing up here today. He must be absolutely exhausted with everything that he's done this week. It has been a massive week for you, Felipe. There is no question. And actual fact, why don't you put in the comments, while I'm moving around the room and asking the rest of the panelists about this particular question, some of the places that you have been this week? I think people would love to go back and have a look at some of those lives. So you get on and put on some of those, including your own one, which was on earlier this morning. It was at 4 a.m. for me, so unfortunately I didn't get to see that one live. So please just put a list of them into the comments. I think everybody would love to see that. And don't forget the one you did with me. Martin, let's come to you and hear what you think about, even though you're taking a hiatus from LinkedIn content yourself at the moment, I have no doubt that you've been having a look to see what leaders are doing on LinkedIn at the moment.
I tend to see the performative. I remember hearing a phrase years ago, be present when you present. And on LinkedIn, now is more than ever, is it you or somebody else? And that somebody else is not always AI. Who is the person posting that? Mardi Gras in Sydney today. I no doubt there would have been lots of leaders. We're proud to be allies. Our organization does X, Y, and Z. At the same time, have they backtracked and retreated from DEI? International Women's Day coming up. There'll be lots of male executives who will do an International Women's Day post. Now, in the office, are they anywhere near as supportive as what they profess to be? Now, KPMG, I'm going to name and shame here. One of their partners was fined for cheating on an AI exam by using AI. much. Well, KPMG and I think the other big four have been caught up because some of their junior staff were using AI to cheat in the financial services licensing exams. So these are the things that get caught out. Now, as an executive, and Melanie and Felipe and Renair and Roy, they share thought leadership. Is this your opinion and why? I'm going to name and shame KPMG again. 6 years ago, when people were concerned about racism, Black Lives Matter, there were lots of videos about DEI. And I remember seeing posts about DEI, and there was a video. And I remember it was either KPMG or Deloitte. And I remember commenting, actually, that video was from 2016. There was all of this recycling, repurposing. And the reason I'm saying repurposing, because what is your purpose and why? What is it you want people to know and understand, and why? How are you conveying that information? Because they're listening through the feed, they're listening to everything else. That's what people take on board. Is it genuine or is it marketing? Is this what you truly believe? If me, from my procurement career, having a conversation with an executive in a sales meeting, what are they like when a contract has been signed? Are they scarpering back and leaving it to somebody else? These are the things now where trust, we're in a post-trust world, we're in a post-truth world. What is fact? What's fiction? It's getting harder to discern. With a leader, your reputation is the one thing that saves you. Your reputation is the one thing that someone go, no, that person would never say that. This is what this person stands for. And on a platform such as LinkedIn, that's where what you post, what you comment, what you say and why become crucial, because people will listen and make their own opinion. And you might not like the opinion that's being formed.
That's a very good point. There was an item in my newsfeed this morning about an AI generated video that was on the official White House feed today about a hockey game, was it? I'm not entirely certain anyway. And the person that was in the video was said to be saying, was looking like they were saying something that they would say, they said publicly, they would never speak like that. Yeah. And so I think that we are in grave danger of having our own thoughts being overtaken by AI and misrepresented. So it seems to me to make more sense to be even more on the case about what we are doing on LinkedIn, showing up at events like this, talking in our own human way, authentically, so that when somebody sees something like that, that they know is out of character for us, that is post-truth and post-trust, then they know that that's simply not us. That's really not us at all. And I think that we are going to see more and more of that as time goes on. So thank you for mentioning that particular one. Roy, thoughts on this one from you?
Yeah, I had a very interesting conversation this week. One of the collaborative partners that I've been working with for the last few years, I assisted them with their trade show preparation, strangely enough, and he helped me with a whole lot of marketing that is his area of expertise. He introduced me to this AI specialist, and what she does, she helps companies starting to use AI in a more effective way to help their company. And so I had a discovery session, just a short discovery session, 3 hours, she calls it. She had a 3-hour discovery session with myself and my team leader. And here was the interesting thing that came out of it. I asked her this question. I said, what is the most, what is the biggest hurdle and the biggest challenge and the biggest obstacle that you have with leaders? There was executive leaders. And her answer to me was, they don't have the time to do any of these things. So they delegate it to people that don't really want to be doing it. And therein lies the problem. And Philip, I obviously love to, hear Felipe's approach on this, because he's worked in big organizations, is when you are faced with a situation as an executive leader, you've got to block out some time to spend with your team to listen. You've got to block out an amount of time to say, forget about everything that's going on in the business. The business is not going to come to a halt because you've blocked out 1 hour of your time to come to a meeting and start to use your 2 ears. Now, most executives, and let's be realistic, this is my experience, they come with an agenda. They come with a specific agenda that they want. But very, very few times does that agenda include the listening aspect. So to answer your question, I think that the same applies to the LinkedIn presence, is they always got a reason not to do it because they're too busy, and they delegate it to somebody. In Felipe's case, he's the right person to delegate it to, but so many companies delegate it to someone that's got no idea, does have no interest, and only is doing it because the boss says, you will do this. And I think that's where the mistake lies, is the opportunity that the executives don't see is people want to hear their views. People want to hear the kind of challenges that they have. People want to hear how they overcome those challenges. And me, I'm not an executive, so let's get that on the table right away. But I share my views of how do I overcome challenges? Why do I have to think about ways to help people? All of those things, not because I'm trying to be a hero, but because that's my nature, is to share my knowledge, experience, and expertise with others, that maybe one person can learn something from it and apply it in their world, which helps them. My name is Roy, and I'm out.
I love that you still use that little outro, Roy. It's so cute, honestly, really. It makes me feel like it's a police thing, Roger and out, that kind of thing. Anyway, sorry, I digress. And you said some really important things in that. And one of the things that it made me think about too was how we are all using AI. And I have found that because AI will do so much for me, that I'm often using it in a way that where I would have originally and pre-AI thought things through myself. I am relying on AI to do that thinking for me, and therefore not taking in that information, not learning it, and therefore not working it through my brain to be able to determine how it should be used or what it might mean. And I think that's a really grave danger of using AI, is that we abrogate responsibility for thinking ourselves. And while that's not strictly speaking part of what we're talking about today, I do think there is a corollary between that and listening. And if you delegate listening to somebody else, a team leader says, I'll just send somebody else in my stead to this meeting to make it look like we're really listening, but we're not, then that's not going to do the job either. So I think that we really do need to be a lot more on the case about making sure we listen and understand what is going on around us, and whether that's in a team leader situation or in a situation like this, attending events, whatever it might happen to be, listening is a really important aspect. And I don't think any of us are really trained well enough in the tactics and the understanding of how that works. So Felipe, your turn now. Have you managed to get all those up, or are you still working on those?
I got
so many.
Except for Sister Saturday chat, which I would be doing a service if I didn't. To back to the point, Roy, all of you all made such great points, and one thing that I've realized is that one of the biggest challenges I've seen is executives getting over the fear of them being on there by themselves, whatever the reason. And Lanier, we talked about this on your show on Wednesday about whether it's fear, compliance, fear of criticism, just not being a social media person, not feeling comfortable enough, not being extroverted enough. But their voices matter. And to Roy's point, when the employees always want to hear from leadership, they want to hear, because that gives them a sense of confidence. Okay, we heard from leadership. This is what they said. We're going to trust them, unless they don't. But when they do, they need to hear from that voice. But to your point, Roy, if you don't know what they need, your message is not going to be heard. And LinkedIn is a way that people, a lot of times in the companies I've seen, when you see the leadership, especially your CEO or one of the executives, get on LinkedIn, repeating what they told them in person, it kind of validates it, and it's like, oh wait, they're telling the public this as well as us. This means that they really mean it, and it solidifies that and adds value. But to your point about meeting with employees, I do this twice a year with every place I've been at. I meet with them for 15 minutes. If they want to meet longer, they can, but it's their 15 minutes for them to talk to me about anything they want and for me just to listen. I get so much information from them. I learn so much. And they tell me that at the end, today's my last day there. When I'm leaving there, they're like, I have a better relationship with you than people I've worked with for 8 years, only because they work in so different types of departments that they never got a chance to talk to each other, except recently when I brought them together. And there's just value in that communication, because there's nothing to listen to if people aren't comfortable sharing with you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I understand that sometimes it's hard to step up and to share and to decide what you're going to share as an executive and what's appropriate and what's not. And as you say, we did discuss that earlier in the week. But I still think that it is a leadership issue that people need to be thinking about. Did you want to say something more? Was that what?
One last thing also is that what I've also found success in of getting leaders to be on there is to invite them on first with you or with somebody else.
Mm.
That is a great first step that makes them realize, oh, that wasn't so bad. Because we're not asking them to do what we do. Produce, manage it all yourself. No, just show up or record something on your phone. That's all we want them to do. But I have had probably the most success in encouraging them to do an interview that they were invited to do, or encourage them to come on camera with me, or whatever that might be. And that has been probably the opening that gateway to them being more open to it.
It makes sense too. So let's move on to talking about listening as influence now, because this is an interesting one that I think might we might hear a few different opinions on, because there's no question that leadership is about influence, and most leaders do have influence within their organizations. But does it need to stay, or should it stay within the organization, or should that influence be heard further afield? And my argument is that yes, it should, because a company doesn't just run on its team, it runs on customers and stakeholders, suppliers and others who might be interested in what is going on. And so having influence as a leader seems to me to be an important point. So I'd like to ask our panelists to consider why people feel heard long before they feel persuaded, the link between listening and trust. I think that that's a very important aspect. And commenting on LinkedIn, to bring it back to a tactical level, commenting as executive listening in action. So are we seeing our leaders commenting on content on LinkedIn? And if so, are they doing it well? How could they be doing it better? And when was the last comment from a leader that you genuinely shifted your perspective or made you feel, oh wow, this person is really doing this well, if ever? So I'd like to hear some views around these particular areas of listening as influence. And again, shall we start with you, Mel?
I think one of the most interesting ways, and I'll say it as somebody, I updated my banner recently, so we had to update the premium level on the platform, because Amazing Ilya designed a beautiful carousel for me. So I had to put it up and kind of show it off. In the process, I think what happens sometimes is we can look at a post, at a newsletter, we can look at a comment sometimes, We may look at a video, we may look at a short, we may look at a clip. But I think as Roy was saying, for many of us who define ourselves as entrepreneurs or founders, I see leaders most often in the unnamed views of who visited my profile in the last 90 days. You see you see someone at an executive level where the company isn't always named. You may just see a piece of the industry. And I think the thing that's hard sometimes is, whether it's attached to ego or not, is the viewpoint. If you care about others' perspectives, you show up genuinely in a way that, and I love that Felipe said this about a culture that he established at his company, a culture of conversation. Some people aren't used to having the conversations at a leadership level. They're used to talking down to people. They're used to facilitating. They're used to instructing, demonstrating, teaching, providing. And I think Lanier had put something about it before in the notes. I think to really be fully present, you got to be a strategic leader, and you have to be willing to share that you've got a viewpoint that you think is worthy of sharing, and share viewpoints that people in your company, your organization, your board, other stakeholders, reshare those opinions and let people know that you care.
I agree. And I think that you have to be open to having those opinions challenged. And I see no reason why that can't be the case. LinkedIn's a very benign environment. And I think someone who is brave enough to say, that's a great idea, Mel, but I've got a differing view on this. And here it is, and lay it out, and not personally attack someone, but actually explain an alternative view, I think is really important. And leaders need to be open to that, because otherwise they're just going to be entrenched in their own ideas and not come as with an open mind, which is what Roy mentioned right at the very beginning of the show today. So thank you for bringing that up. And yes, I made a note of the culture of conversation. I think that's a really good phrase, actually, that might appear in something else that I write in the next little while. So thank you for that. Martin, some ideas around influence, listening as influence.
Restream will not like me sharing this with you. Yesterday, I had an email from Restream. About 6-7 months ago, I logged a help desk request because I found sometimes the feed to LinkedIn didn't work. It had issues with it. Yesterday, I had an email back saying, well, did I still have an issue with it? They looked into it. There was no longer a problem. Now, it might have been my internet connection, but I just recently left. It took them 6-7 months to reply to an issue. And I think that's the key point here, is issue. How are they being resolved? Can somebody raise an issue? Now, on LinkedIn, that comes to a comment. There are two CEOs. One is the former CEO of Optus. It was around a Mardi Gras time. And she commented around leadership, saying something. And I commented, not to catch her out, but just to add value to what she was saying. About a week later, when I was boxing training, one of the people at the boxing club worked at Optus and told me, your question sparked an entire debate. Because people at the organization had seen the comment, it engaged in internal conversation. They're asking this, and she was engaging. So you see a person advocating, another question asking, well, how can people advocate, sparked an internal conversation. Now, for me, talk about the culture, visibly being supportive to a community, then on a question, having that courage to have that conversation internally, probably on their social media feed. For me, that is an executive, is not just listening, but actively engaging in listening and conversations. For me, that's probably one of the best examples of a leader listening. Now, the other was an individual who was commenting after things transpired. Things happening Why didn't anybody speak up? I asked a question. What are you going to do differently? Came back a few days later, that person went back to business as usual. Now, I private messaged that person because I wanted to do awareness of something. Can you support me? Silence back. The person had read them. So you see the two different things. Comes back to what I was mentioning earlier, your purpose, the clarity, the leadership story, the integrity, the trust, all the things that Felipe was saying we've all been saying. And this is where the comments engagement on LinkedIn really has the true impact. Because if there's a hint of the leader isn't genuine, being an executive, that's absolutely fine. But that's where the seeds of doubt become opportunities that you have a forest of trust? Or is it that forest is being chopped down to make way for the latest highway? These are the things that it doesn't take much to lose trust and lose a reputation. But it doesn't take much either to really be. As my first example, and it was Optus. Optus obviously had issues in the past with things being in and out of the press, but former CEO, as far as I'm concerned, was able to openly have a conversation internally about an issue. That, for me, that was a sign of a very good culture.
Yes.
I'm going to have to go, everybody. Guys, I'm just kind of going to need to wrap up, but have a fantastic weekend, everybody.
Thanks for joining us, Martin. Lovely to see you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Forest of trust. I love that particular phrase. Roy, commenting. You are someone who encourages people to comment on posts a lot, and I'm interested to see from you whether or not you are noticing senior leaders commenting on LinkedIn as a result of what you're doing, or just generally, really. Are you seeing them there making use of this new key strategy for LinkedIn, commenting?
Well, actually, I do have a story that I'd like to share, and it has to do with a very top executive. His name is Sean Bonnet, Bonett. He's in the top 100 most wealthiest guys in Australia. So I would call him an executive. He runs like 3 or 4 multi-million companies, and he's really, really the top of his game. And he has commented on my posts quite regularly. And in fact, I took the cheeky approach to invite him to be a guest on my business show, Disruptive, talking business strategies, and he agreed to come on.
Oh, wow.
And what I learned from him, I probably haven't learned in 10 years on LinkedIn. So here's my point. If we could coax these kind of people to comment on posts, to share posts, to share their thoughts, we would be so much richer. And from him, I really learned so much. And then I also want to give another little plug to 2 people in this room. And the session that you had with Felipe, it was in the middle of the morning for me. It was a very awkward time, but I listened to it for an hour because it had so much value in it. And that's the beauty of these conversations, is we can learn so much. And I know I've said this already, I'm going to say it again. Enter every conversation with an intention to learn something. And isn't that really the whole essence of these conversations, is to go to the conversation with an intention to learn something. And even if it's one thing, that's it. That's all you need to learn. But the reality is that, to answer your question, Lene, is Sean Bonnet opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I'm extremely grateful. I have been very, very fortunate on my comments and my posts that I've had quite a lot of reasonably successful executives commenting on, and most times they comment in a very meaningful way. They don't just say great post. They say, this is our thoughts. And I
Right.
love that
Mm.
because I want to hear their thoughts. I don't want them to tell me whether it's a good post or a bad post or a lovely post or not a lovely post. I want to hear their views. I want to hear what are they going to say around it. And not only that, I would like them to add a viewpoint in. What about this? Have you thought about this? So so that's where I was very, very fortunate to have Sean Bonnet come and join me on one of my podcasts and comment on my posts as well. And here's the other little bonus that happened to me: is he followed me on Instagram, which I think was an absolute win-win for me because he's actually interested in my personal life as well. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
You sure? Does he play golf?
He doesn't actually, strangely enough.
No. That would be the ideal, wouldn't it? Get him on the golf
Would
course.
be.
But anyway, I'd like to have a chat with you about him after we've finished here today, if that would be all right. But Felipe, let's move on to you because I've got one more question before we wrap up today. But I would like to hear your views on this one that we're talking about here today about commenting from senior leaders on LinkedIn.
Absolutely. and I'll tie into the influencing too, I think, because, and by the way, Lanier, I hope we get together in real life one day because I'd love to play a round of golf with you. But on a different note, the power of commenting is so valuable, and not only for the individual, but for the organization and also just for your colleagues out there. But I want to go back to the influence part of it. I mentioned my angelic quote all the time of, people don't care how much you said, what you did. It's more about how you made them feel. And I know I butchered the quote, so forgive me. But the point is that when each of us refer back to something that somebody else said, when Roy just said, when I listened to you and Lanier on the podcast, that made us feel a little more valued, right? Mm-hmm. When I say, hey, I love what Melanie said earlier about trust on her podcast, it makes her feel heard and seen. When leaders learn about their teams and their staff and they regurgitate it back and say, hey, did you know that so-and-so just won a ice bucket, not ice bucket, what do you call it when you jump into ice and
ice challenge?
Well, it's not ice. It's just, when people do for health reasons, or for sore muscles, they just put themselves in an ice bath. But
Lucy, maybe.
Well, but she did that, but she did it for like good causes and stuff like that. And people would promote her and share about that and be like, that's so fascinating. Tell me about it. Having a senior leader share something that she shared with them that she was okay with him sharing made her again feel so seen and heard. So I see that when you're on LinkedIn and you boast about your team, well, it's not just amongst your peers, it's now public. And you're doing something so powerful. And it's not just pride in the company, it's pride in the contribution that you made because it's seen. And with that being said, how are you, my friend?
Can you guys hear me? Fabulous. I am so happy to finally join you after 3 weeks of absence.
If I could just wrap up with one thing, Lanier, is one of the best things I've seen leaders do is when they are talking to somebody, they repeat what they say.
Felipe, can you just hold it there for a second? Ilya, can you just put yourself on mute for a minute because it's changed the dynamic and I can't hear Felipe. Sorry, thank you. Felipe, continue. Sorry.
Whenever a leader speaks to somebody about anything that's relevant or important, not just like how was the weather, having the leader repeat back saying, okay, if I heard you correctly, this is what I heard, A, B, C, D. That I think is such a great way of validating that you are listening actively and that you heard correctly. I think that's an important practice for all of us to use because it really does add value when you're talking to your team, colleagues, vendors, partners, whoever it may be.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Earlier, we just seem to have a bit of a sound issue there. So we've been talking about executive listening today, and I was just about to do a wrap up since we're coming up to the top of the hour. But if you have some comments that you'd like to add or share about executive listening today, I'd very much like to hear from you around those.
I don't know if my new headset is giving issues, but I'm gonna be brief. Executive listening is all about to ensure that there's the correct feedback. It's taken into consideration and actually put into action. It's not only say yes, and then the rest of the teammates or other stakeholders get ignored because there's a leader who has a strong opinion on how direction should go. It should be weighted and understood, and the best decision taken. That is great executive listening, is when the decisions are made based on feedback, based on assertive critical thinking, and then the best action taken forward. Yeah? This is me right now.
Okay, thank you so much. I'd like to wrap up with asking each of our panelists for something specific that they would like people to take away from this conversation today. Now, Roy's very fond of saying that it needs to be practical and implementable. And if you do take away anything, what can you actually put into place today that is going to shift the needle? So I'd like to go around the room and ask each of our panelists to give us one particular point, a strategy, a tactic, or an idea that they think that senior leaders could put in place to be able to not only listen better, but to demonstrate that they are listening to their teams, to stakeholders, to those who they are in a position to influence. So again, Mel, we'll start with you, put you on the spot, but you've always got something useful to add, so I have no problem at all about you going first.
Thank you so much. I think the part about curiosity, if you're reflecting back what you think you've heard, if you're summarizing a thought, an idea, if you're welcoming it, but I think that part about always showing up with curiosity, it'll remind and encourage other leaders with quiet voices, sometimes with silent voices, to kind of show up differently and show up with curiosity. It reminds others we care.
Thank you. Curiosity. I love that. Roy, you're next. Something people can implement.
I suppose the last message that I'd like to leave for an executive member that has trying to do some sort of a listening skill, and that is to use your voice, to use the knowledge and experience and expertise that you have to empower others. And if you can enter that room, whether it's a boardroom, whether it's one person's office, with an intention to empower them through your experience and knowledge and expertise, then you're sharing that knowledge and expertise with somebody else. That's my last message.
And I think that's a very important one as well. So thank you for that. Felipe.
Yes, for me, I'm going to just bring it back to communication. Come up with a style of communication and be consistent, clear, transparent, but most importantly, answer the questions that they have. By doing that, you're sending the message that you've heard them, you're sharing it, and you're not just sharing it with the one individual, you're sharing it with everyone so that everyone can benefit from those questions. So communicate consistently. If it's an email or in a meeting weekly, whatever it is, just keep on being consistent.
Makes sense to me. And Elia.
Well, there's something happened at a meeting that I had today. And there were VPs, there were high-level managers and directors. And there were other people, down the organizational chart, experts. One thing that I consider valuable, and it makes me feel at ease, is when leaders show relatability. That they are not those that are so high up that they know it all, that people simply need to listen to them without taking into the feedback or accepting the voices or comments, questions, and even questioning of their own leadership by others down below their levels. And it helps those that are considered in their beginning stages, or we're all expert at some point on our field, regardless of the level in the organizational chart. But by showing that they don't know it all and they are actually open to seek this feedback, they get down into their same level of like, I am not just your superior at a different chart, at a different organizational level. I am one of you. I need and I seek your feedback in order for us to be better, not just for my own recognition. That's my message for today.
Relatability. That's a great message to share. I really like that one. So thank you very much for coming on and sharing that with us today. I'm really pleased about that. So my takeaway around this at a practical level is that if you're a senior executive and you want to be visible through the feed on LinkedIn, then reposting someone else's post that you think has got value, but adding your own opinions to it, your own thoughts or ideas, is a really good way to get around the problem of having to spend hours, if it takes you that long, to create a post of your own. Because as we discussed with Felipe earlier in the week, executives don't have a lot of time to be doing lots of content creation. And so being able to show up and find a post that is in their area of expertise, that they have got something that they can add that is of use and of value, is a really good way to be able to reduce that friction over, I haven't got time to post. And so if you are a senior leader, reposting with your own thoughts is a really good way around that, if you don't actually want to comment on the post itself, which of course you should do as well. Anyway, I want to wrap up by saying executive leadership when it comes to listening is a fascinating topic, and I'd like to be able to do some more with it. And I'll probably repurpose the information that we've all shared today in this event, in this live stream, into different formats, and to share people's ideas with a wider audience over the next few weeks. So I want to thank Roy for the opportunity to have me back again. And I'm always pleased to join you at the end of each month. And thank you very much indeed for joining us, Mel and Felipe, Ilya, and the now, I was going to say departed, but that's not quite the right word, who has left the room, Martin today, and Roy, for sharing their ideas with us. Roy, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolute pleasure. And if I can maybe just thank you, we look forward to these sessions once a month. They're always, filled with well-prepared, knowledge, experience, and they're absolutely awesome. I also want to thank, the speakers that came and joined us, Felipe. We really appreciate it. Ilya, I know that your Friday, I know you hear me say this every time, but your Friday is probably just such a huge balancing act. If you can come and join us for 2 minutes, that is gold for us. And Mel, you always show up with an enormous amount of value. But Lene, if I can, and Martin, of course, as well. But Lene, thank you so much for all that you bring to our sessions. And then lastly, our master connector, Meryl, who, introduces people, brings people to the room, invites people to the room, invites comments, shares comments. So this is the end of February for us. And I just wanted to share this because it has an impact on the ways that we're going to go forward. Is we're going to choose the theme for the month so that we concentrate on one thing for the month. And the month of March, we're going to concentrate on the terminology, how we deliver. What are the ways that we can deliver? Because that's the essence of business, is how we deliver, how we deliver a speech, how we deliver a presentation. There's just so many different ways. So that's going to be the theme for the month of March, how we deliver. So if anyone's got any ideas, please email me with their topics, and we're more than welcome to include them, because don't forget they're 4 weeks in March. So thank you for joining us. Have a super weekend. We really do appreciate everyone being with us, and we look forward to seeing you next week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. See you later.